Welcome back to Behind the Gloves. I'm Gassing, and I'm delighted to be joined by Matchroom Boxing CEO Frank Smith. How are you, pal?
Yeah, very well, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, very good. I kind of want to start at the weekend just gone, and I hope you catch my flow when I say this, but 2,500 punches. What fight?
Amazing. Amazing. What a fight. I'd say probably the best fight I've ever seen live. And a few people asked me, were saying, how do you score it? And to be honest, I don't score fights, but when it's like that, you're just sort of locked into the action. It was back and forth, wasn't it? And, it certainly didn't disappoint.
I'm glad you brought up like scoring, because obviously there was another card, the 117, 111, going against Chocolatito. In your opinion, how do you get rid of this stuff? Because it's happened a few times now. It damages the sport, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think the action has to be led by the governing bodies, the sanctioning bodies, because ultimately, we get a lot of stick about it, but we don't choose the officials. Otherwise it shouldn't work that way anyway. We shouldn't be choosing who the officials are for the events. But things do have to change. I think the difficulty always is that someone ultimately argues that it's a subjective opinion, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if so many people have a different opinion to you on something, then it's hard for the governing bodies, etc., to argue what some of the officials do. But I do know it's something that's being worked on at all levels by, like I say, the relevant parties. We'll continue to work with them as much as we can, because ultimately we want the sport to come across in the best light. And like you say, it does affect things, because people tuning in, watching, will say, how does that come to that? So something we're working on, and something I know the governing bodies and sanctioning bodies are working closely on to try and improve things where they can, of course.
Well, it's kind of going in the right way, isn't it? I think the WBA have kind of suspended that judge until they look into it. Obviously, I don't know that side of things. I assume that's just normal.
Yeah, I think we've had it as well in the UK, where the board have suspended a judge, or sort of put them on hold until they have a hearing. And I think ultimately they'll watch back the fight and have the relevant party sort of explain why they scored it the way they did. I suppose that's the only way you can really understand why someone's done that. It was wide. I think the fight could have gone either way. As I said, I didn't sit there scoring it myself, but it was so much back and forth that you couldn't have really argued who would have got the win. But yeah, the scoring was too wide on that occasion, for sure.
And in regards to like what's next for both fighters, I know Rung Vasai the night before has become the mandatory, as he won his fight over in Thailand. But what do you think's next for Chocolatito? He's still a great fighter. I think he's still got plenty left.
Yeah, for sure. No, look, we're speaking to Rung Vasai's team, as you mentioned. He was actually the mandatory back in, I think, sort of December. Wow. And we agreed, all parties, to do the Chocolatito Estrada fight on this occasion, the winner to fight Rung Vasai. I think there's a lot of different routes that could be taken. You could look at doing a rematch again, but Rung Vasai wants his shot, that is his fair shot to get another go for that WBC belt, and now the WBA as well. So lots of different ways it can play out, but I'm sure you'll see them all back in the mix again very soon. We're looking to do, as you say, the Rung Vasai fight. Do the rematch again in time, but all those guys are always involved in entertaining fights. So lots to look forward to.
And the last thing I want to kind of touch on those guys is each Rung Vasai, Estrada, Chocolatito, three of the greatest fighters of the lower weight divisions. They've all fought each other twice now. Do you think they get that kind of credit they deserve? Like if they were welterweights, blimey, they'd be like global superstars. Do you think they get the credit they deserve?
Look, maybe not from outside of the core boxing audience. Within boxing, they are superstars.
Yeah.
And that's, I suppose, our job to try and push that out to the wider sports market and just show how good these fighters are, because as you say, they deserve to be stars. And like I say, they are within boxing fans. Chocolatito, for example, is a hero, isn't he?
Legend. He's an absolute legend.
So I do think there's always room for their profiles to grow, for sure, and that's something we'll continue to do and continue to work on. But you know, unfortunately, I think that's part of the sport as well. The heavier weights do get more and more interest. But you know, we'll continue to push them, and I think, you know, they are big names, especially when you look at, I don't know if you saw the documentary piece we put together in the lead up to the fight. You look at sort of the career Chocolatito especially he's had. You know, he's a star, especially in his own country as well. So, you know, but something we'll always continue to work on and push, because these guys deserve as much limelight as they can possibly get, especially with performances like Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I kind of want to structure this interview, but I don't think it's going to go that way because there's so much stuff I want to ask you about. The next thing I want to ask you about is, obviously we're going straight into another fight week. Lawrence Okolie obviously challenging Christopher Glowacki for the WBO cruiserweight title. Right, bring up a sour point. It's 2-0 to away fighters as it stands. Why is Lawrence Okolie different?
I think we've seen some great improvements with Lawrence Okolie since he's been with Shane McGuigan. Looked really good. You know, obviously it wasn't the test we expected in his last fight, very late notice, but he did look very good, and you can see the improvements he's made. Don't get me wrong, it's a hard fight against Glowacki. But I just think now's Lawrence's time, and I truly believe he'll become Britain's next world champion. You know, as you say, it's been a tough start to the year, of course. You know, with Lara beating Josh Warrington, then Avanesyan got the win over Josh Kelly. But, you know, ultimately, I think it's only good for the sport.
Oh, definitely.
In the long run, you know, these great fights keep people intrigued. And again, you know, I think the fans, as providing the fighters give entertainment, which they do, the fans, you know, whether you win, lose or draw, if you give it your all, they respect that. And there's always a route back for you as well. So, but yeah, focusing on Lawrence himself, I think he's got all the skills and all the attributes to go out there and win the cruiserweight world title on Saturday.
And just to touch on a couple of other fights on that bill, obviously Anthony Fowler's back on that bill. He's fighting for Terra, I think, when he was top 15 and one of the top 15 in the world in the super welterweight division. And the people, it's an important fight for him because they always talk about the fight before the big fight is the important one, because that's the one you need to get through. How do you think he does on Saturday night? And can we see him in a ring with Fitzgerald at some point this year?
Yeah, look, that's definitely the plan, to make that rematch with Fitzgerald for sure. Fowler obviously had to pull out originally from the previous date. You know, I think he had COVID, so it's good to get him back scheduled very quickly. And it just shows, you know, he stayed fit, stayed in the gym. And the Fortier fight was one that was made, as I say, I think for one of our February shows. Yeah. So to get it back on so quickly is great. And I think, you know, his aim is to stay active. And like I say, he wants that Fitzgerald fight, and I'm sure it will happen. But great time in the light middleweight division as well. There's a lot of intriguing fights out there for, you know, both Fowler and Fitzgerald to look forward to. You got Conway, you got Cheeseman's fighting Metcalf, obviously. So the winner of that, Sully Sissoko fought at the weekend as well. You know, real exciting time. So lots of big fights for all those guys.
When's Scott next back out?
Scott Fitzgerald?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be fighting on April 10th. There's a small chance it could be pushed back slightly, but yeah, he's back out. He's going to be back out very soon.
And finally on that card, the last fight I want to speak to you about is Billen Smith. Obviously, I think he's fighting for the WBA Continental Cruiserweight title, right? Is he still the Commonwealth champ? Is he defending that title, or has that been vacated?
He's not. He hasn't vacated it, but we can find a applicable opponent within the time. So he's fighting Ducar, which is actually a real good test for him. So it's a good fight. It's unfortunate that we couldn't do the Dion Juma fight. It's one we've been working on for a long time for British and Commonwealth. But you know, we'll aim to try and get that scheduled at another point. But yeah, he's still got the Commonwealth belt. But his focus is this Saturday against Ducar, and as you say, for the WBA belt.
And kind of swiftly moving on, I know you mentioned the April 10th card. A big announcement. I think it was last night or the night before. Shannon Courtney against Ebony Bridges. That fight's been boiling over for a little while now. I know they've had a little bit of back and forth, and I know that fight was talked about, I think, last year. But what a fight! What a step in at 4 weeks' notice. Talk to me a little bit about that. How did she know that was she kind of like on standby, or was it just she was approached and bang, deal was sorted out?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw sort of Rachel Ball put out an interview as well about what she's been going through with COVID. So I was obviously supposed to make the Courtney Ball fight, and early on in the year she got COVID, so we delayed it. And as time sort of transpired, she unfortunately hasn't been well enough to be to keep training. So hopefully she's back and better in the gym soon for Rachel. But yeah, Ebony had her fight actually at the weekend.
Yeah.
And we'd spoken to her a couple of weeks ago, even maybe before, about stepping in if Rachel wasn't going to be ready. She'd obviously been fit and training for her fight in Australia. And now she's gone straight over to, I think, Philadelphia. She trains in full time. She's gone straight there, get ready for the camp. So it's a great fight. Shannon also looked really good in her last performance. So really looking forward to that one. Excited for that fight.
Dangerous move though, because we saw it with Andy Ruiz. He beat Dimitrenko, and then 5 weeks later he was in against AJ, and it's the same type of scenario here, isn't it? She's just won like a national title. 4 weeks later, now she's in shape. Like there's none of this cutting kind of weight or building muscles or kind of sharpening up the tools. They're already pretty sharp. So it's a dangerous move and a great fight. Great fight.
Yeah, no, great fight. And that's what we want to deliver. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't help late minute replacements, last minute changes. But as you say here, Ebony's been training, had the fight, and straight back onto it. So it's going to be a great fight. Looking forward to it.
And just touching on the main event of that card, Conor Benn against Samuel Vargas. Is this the right step for Conor?
Yeah, for sure. We saw how Conor performed in, I think it was November now, against Formella. Really showed improvements from his last fight. And it's a fight. Samuel Vargas is a fight he's wanted for a long, long time. And Conor's in a great position now. He does big numbers on Sky, and looking forward to getting him back out there, because he's the one who's pushing himself. He obviously had a coming through. It took a long period of time of learning fights, etc. But he's only young, and now he feels he's in a position to really take that next step. So it's an exciting fight, and Conor's always entertaining, isn't he? But really showed how he's come along in his last fight. So looking forward to see even further improvements now.
Is a Josh Kelly fight dead between those two?
I think Josh Kelly obviously went in there, took a real tough test against David Avanesian. He's always shown that he's willing to take step-ups, did the same with Robinson as well. And we'll have to see what Josh Kelly does now. I think probably most likely he'd look to move to 154, I'd guess, and get some wins there. But who knows what can happen in the next few years. Maybe it's not going to happen this year, but maybe in time it could do as things progress. But, some real exciting fights out there for Conor Benn.
Oh, definitely. And a week after, obviously, we've got the fight, Demetrius Andre against Liam Williams. Obviously, Williams isn't a big name in the US, but us over here in the UK, we know we can fight. He's a tough man. How do you think that fight plays out? Do you think Williams has a chance, or is Demetrius just on another level?
Well, look, I think Liam believes in himself and believes he can go out there and win the fight, which is great to see. He's worked all this time to get this mandatory shot, but Demetrius believes he's on another level, and Demetrius wants to step on following this fight to even bigger names, bigger fights. So we'll see what happens, but it's a really exciting one, and Liam Williams is going to bring it. It's going to be a great fight. So I think great fight for the UK fans as well, and glad we could get it done. But I'm excited for that one. And Liam, like I say, Liam is not holding anything back. There's been a lot of hate, not a lot of hate, maybe is the wrong word, but there's been a lot of back and forth between the two of them. So I'm looking forward to fight week as well.
Oh, it makes for great entertainment. Is there much you can tell us about the undercard on that one?
We're just working through it all now. There's going to be some announcements soon. So yeah, a few good fights on there. And as I say, announce that probably towards the end of this week.
And a hot topic at the moment, Usyk Joyce. Is there been any development kind of on that? What's going on with the kind of negotiations? Is it angling towards the fight happening?
To be honest, don't know too much about it. I know it's being spoken about at the moment, but no further developments, and I'm sure has been spoken about by a number of different people around, potential deals, potential first bids, etc. But no further info as far as I'm aware just yet.
And what I want to ask this question just because I want to go to the fight. Is there any information like you can tell us about the Whyte-Povetkin fan situation? Because I know Eddie mentioned it a couple of times that fans might be able to fly over, and there might be some in attendance.
Yeah, I think there will be fans in attendance. We're just working through it all now.
Nope, you gone.
Sorry, my phone just rang.
Oh,
I'm doing this on my phone. My laptop camera's broken, so
no.
yeah, there will be fans in attendance. But when it comes to actually travelling to Gibraltar, I don't think, at that point, unless the government's suddenly changed their review of travel, I don't think that's going to be available, because currently it's only for permitted reasons. But like I say, we're working towards fans in attendance for local people in Gibraltar who live in Gibraltar.
Oh, I see. Okay, fine. And Canelo-Saunders, do we have a venue?
Hoping to announce later this week. Obviously, there's a few options in Vegas and the AT&T in Dallas that we're looking into now. So next few days, I'm sure you'll see an announcement on that one.
And what do you make of Billy Joe? Like, we know he likes to play mind games, but there's been a lot of posts about him weighing 95 kilograms. He's had the flu, that he's just going over there to basically take a picture with Canelo and lie down and take the money. And what do you make of all that stuff?
It depends what day you get him on. Well, because he said previously he could have taken the Canelo fight in November, December last year. Yeah. But do you remember he came out and said, I want to be the best. I want to be fit. I'm not going into this just for the money. So it's what day you get him on. I know Billy Joe, he's training hard, but it's quite funny following all the developments, and especially the US media. I'm not sure they quite get his sarcasm on it, but he's a funny character, and he's always entertaining. But I feel rest assured that he's going to turn up in absolute peak condition, and can't wait for that fight. It's a real exciting one, unification, and one step closer for either of those guys to go and win all the belts.
I think Canelo released, I think on Aztec TV, it was either today or yesterday, that he's really likes working with you guys, and he sees the partnership lasting a very long time. Is there anything you can tell us about that? Is there like kind of a set amount of deals? Is it kind of like a rolling thing?
Yeah, look, it's quite public knowledge. We've got a 2-fight deal with him, Yildirim, and then the Billy Joe fight. It's great working with him. He's a great character to be around. He's what he's done for the sport, and how long he's been around for. I think people forget like how many years this guy's been around for, and is now sort of at the peak of his career. So it's great to be involved with the biggest names in the sport, and hopefully we can continue to work with them. He's a great person to deal with, and his team are great to deal with as well. So it's what our business is all about, working with the biggest stars. I know there's been a lot of talk about like Billy Joe, Canelo, but ultimately we want to be involved with all the biggest fighters, because we want to make the biggest fights for the people we represent. So we just want great fights, and we want the sport to continue building. And the only way we do that is by putting on great nights, great shows, and working with the best talent out there.
And I'm glad you kind of mentioned wanting to work with like kind of the greatest fighters. It's the last kind of topic I want to touch on before we finish. But news broke yesterday that Anthony Joshua and both Tyson Fury have signed their contracts to fight. How excited are you about that? I know there's some other things that I know. It's been in the news that site fees still need to be agreed and yada, yada, yada. But it's going in the right direction, right?
Yeah, look, there is still a lot of work that needs to be done on that fight. Site being the key one, date, broadcast discussions, etc. So there's a lot of detail that needs to go into. But I think it's a positive step that everyone's moving in the same direction and wants the fight to happen. I do truly believe that all parties, and the fact of the news that came out is a good sign that it's moving in the right direction for the fight to happen. But like I say, a lot of work still to be done, and that's why it wasn't an announcement. Obviously, it came out everywhere as if the fight was done, signed, sealed, delivered in all senses, and there were no questions. But like I say, still a lot of work to be done, but positive steps that the biggest fight in world boxing can happen, and touch wood, will happen.
And what do you make of Tyson Fury's comments? I think he said in an MPK show last week that he stopped training. He's trying to, not his exact words, I don't want to get in trouble, kind of like in the lines of he's trying to up his Stellar count from 10 to 12.
He didn't look like he was drinking Stellas that night. No, I just think Tyson, he's a great showman, and he's great at selling things, and maybe it's all part of the mind games, etc. But he wants this fight as well. I think everyone wants this fight to happen. So I'm quite sure that Tyson Fury is still training and still wants to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So you have to take it all with a pinch of salt, I think. But I don't know. I don't speak to him, so I'm not sure.
And the last thing, I'm not going to ask you who wins that fight because I know what you're going to say. But how does AJ do it?
Knocks him out.
Knocks him out. Have you got a round?
No, I was just going to say he knocks him out. I think AJ knocks him out, becomes the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, then knocks him out again.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good assessment. Well, Frank Smith, thank you very much for talking to us here at Behind the Gloves. Hopefully, we'll catch up with you at one of the Matchroom shows in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, mate. Speak to you soon.
Oh, hey there, fight fans. Didn't see you there. If you guys haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go to do so by clicking right here, or else.